Bridget Jones. It's time to live.
This Galentine's Day, make a date with Peacock.
I've set you up on Tinder. What? You're welcome.
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones.
But you can call her Mummy.
Experience the final chapter of Bridget's unforgettable journey.
By all that's holy, Bridget Jones.
You are a brilliant woman. Embrace the chaos.
Enjoy your weekend, Mrs. Darcy.
Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. Streaming only on Peacock February 13th.
I have mastered the pattern of self-abandonment. I know it backwards and forwards. That's the map that I've created. And now I'm starting to create a pattern of self-trust, moment by moment, conversation by conversation, decision by decision at a time. You're listening to Make Some Noise Podcast, episode number 658. Welcome to Make Some Noise Podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you're here, partly because this episode kicks off 10 weeks in a row of birthday episodes. I am bringing you every Wednesday, starting today, a different life lesson as we slowly trudge towards my 50th birthday, which is on April 15th. I think the 10th episode comes out on April 16th, if I'm not mistaken. But this is the first one. And exciting, every week with these, I am going to be giving away a book, one of my books. It's either going to be 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, Make Some Noise, or How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. It's going to be at random. And so what you need to do every week to enter to win, super easy. Just head on over to Instagram. I'm at Hey Andrea Owen over there. I will have a post every Wednesday specifically that is around the podcast episode. And so the instructions will be there on what to comment, and I will just be picking at random, giving away a book at random. I also I can't move forward without mentioning what's happening in the world. Hostile government takeover, the apocalypse, monkeys running the show. There are not enough words, I think, for any of us to describe this, but it's inciting a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of what ifs. And this feels reminiscent of 2020 and the beginning of the pandemic and just in how scary that was. This is slightly different, but still incredibly scary. And I did a mini-sode on it last Friday, episode 657, if you missed it. And I think all I want to say about it right now is please take care of yourself. Please take care of your energy. Please take care of your mind and your body and your emotions and your spirit, because doing things like scrolling longer than you know that you should, seeking out stories that you know you probably shouldn't, like worst case scenario things, or arguing with strangers on the internet. These are not things that are going to be helpful for you and anyone else, and people who are being harmed and impacted negatively. We need you to save your energy, because this is the long game. Part of me is like, what in the world does it matter that I'm talking about self-help? Why on earth should I keep talking about life lessons that I've learned as I approach 50? And the real answer is truly, and this comes from my intuition, is that this may be needed more than ever as people are trying to cope and trying to get involved any way that they can, whether that's just with their families and neighbors, or it's on a larger scale, whether it's grassroots or more globally. You need to show up as your best self. You need to know how to communicate with yourself and with others. You need to come home to yourself. And coming home to yourself is sort of the theme of these 10 episodes. Like, what does that mean? And I do think that, well, I don't think, I know that I named it that because this is a poignant birthday for me as I turn 50. I don't think that you necessarily have to be turning 50 or having any milestone birthday or milestone time in your life in order to hear the lessons and reflect on what does it mean for you to come home to yourself. So that's largely what this is going to be about. Speaking of coming home to yourself, I am going to facilitate Write Your Way Through It. Again, at the end of February, we start. And there's early bird pricing going on right now, and that will end. Write Your Way Through It is a 6-week online program. We meet on Wednesday nights and we gather as women, or people who identify as women, and we talk about hard stuff. You get one-on-one laser coaching from me in terms of where you want to go with this stuff that you bring. And I will give you things to questions to ask yourself. I'm not going to give you any answers. That's not what you come to me for. I'm going to give you reflective questions to ask yourself, to journal on, so that you can write your way through it, so that you can get to whatever place it is that you're looking for. And for most people, that's massive self-awareness around a particular topic or theme in their life, so that they can come home to themselves, so that they can understand that they do have so much power, more and more power than you think that you do. AndreaOwen.com/program. Of course, that will be in the show notes. All right. So the title of this particular episode is called Coming Home to Yourself, The Essential Path of Self-Trust. Of course, on the title in the email and the podcast post, it's called Episode 1 on Self-Abandonment, Codependency, and Self-Trust, because that's really what this is. Self-abandonment is another word for codependency. I like self-abandonment better because to me, it better describes what the behavior is. Codependency is, it just becomes misconstrued a lot because of the name of it. And so I prefer self-abandonment. I do think that there's some nuances to it. They're not exactly the same thing, but I'm gonna get into that. And yes, I did record a mini-sode not that long ago, maybe a month or two ago, on self-trust. So I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But this one's going to be a little bit different. I am going to talk about what self-abandonment actually looks like. I'm going to deep dive into that a little bit. And then I'm also going to talk about your inner compass. Like, how do we not do this anymore? Because I'm not here just to talk about the problem. I'm also here to talk about the solution. Also, this particular episode, all of the episodes are going to have this. There is a worksheet. It's actually a series of worksheets. I think this one is 3 different pages where I ask you specific questions on this topic, as well as there are 3 very specific journaling prompts. One of them is a love letter to write, and 2 of them are journaling prompts. This is about integration too. If you like this topic and feel like you can relate to it, it resonates with you, go to AndreaOwen.com/658 and you can grab that series of worksheets. Again, I think it's 3 worksheets. So again, AndreaOwen.com/658. All right, let's get on with it. I know that I've talked about this probably many times on the podcast, and my own personal example of abandoning my own truth, of walking away from myself, of self-abandoning. And it happened when it started when I was a teenager. So the first time I remember walking away from my own truth was when I was about 19 years old. I had been dating someone for a couple of years at that point, and it was fine, your typical, teenage relationship. And I kind of felt like I was starting to outgrow him. Was still having fun with him, as any 19-year-old would, but felt like I should probably wrap it up. Like I should probably walk away from this. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it because of many, many reasons that I'm writing a memoir about. But some of those were that, we had been together for a couple of years and I was afraid to walk away from it. I had, when you've been with someone for 2 years, even when you're a teenager, you start to build your life around that person. It doesn't matter if you're 19 or if you're 49. You have built your life around that person. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to walk away from that. It was familiar. It was easy. I still liked him enough. And I walked away from the truth that told me I was better off without him. I needed to stretch my wings. This was such a poignant time in my life. I was about to be 20, enter this brand new decade, and it was time for me to do that without him. And I walked away from that truth. P.S. I did end up marrying him, and then that truth came barreling back when I was 30, 31. So it all ended up blowing it up in my face. And I've had many other moments like that since then. And really, it's the quiet whisper of your intuition that I'm talking about that creates this push-pull, not necessarily an argument. It didn't really feel like an argument to me, but that might be your experience. The quiet whisper of my intuition versus the loud voice of shoulds and shouldn'ts, the loud voice of comfort and conformity, the loud voice of what is going to be uncomfortable if I make this very hard decision to break up with this person versus staying in my comfort zone of just staying in the relationship. And what we're really doing when we abandon ourselves, when we let the loud voice of should and shouldn'ts, of comfort, when we let that win, we're abandoning ourselves, but we're also trying to stay safe. We're doing that in order to try to stay safe because we know that anything that involves an uncomfortable behavior, anything that involves having to make a decision where we are going to hurt ourselves, hurt other people, do something that is out of the ordinary, do something scary and uncertain where we don't know what it's going to be like on the other end, or we don't know what it's like during, like, what do we say when we break up with someone? Like things like that. When we're trying to avoid that, we are simply trying to stay safe. And I say that because I hear a lot of people when they realize how much they have self-abandoned, when they realize how much they've ignored their intuition, they can drop into a place of really beating themselves up over it. And so I want to say from the get-go, when we are self-abandoning, we are trying to stay safe. We're trying to get our needs met in that moment. We are doing the best that we can with the tools that we have at that time, even if those tools are simply, I just want to stay safe right now. If that's all we have. Sometimes we know that we're ignoring our intuition. Sometimes we know that we're self-abandoning, especially when you get older and you start listening to podcasts like these and and you still do the other thing. Fuck, I've done it. I've done it. I've written self-help books. Okay, we need to take a quick ad break, but when we come back, I'm going to do a deep dive in what this could look like in your life. So buckle up. We'll be right back. Let's talk about something that doesn't get enough airtime: perimenopause and menopause. Hot flashes, sleepless nights, mood swings, brain fog, body changes. You're not imagining it. It's real and it's frustrating. But here's the good news. You don't have to live like this. Meet MIDI Health, specialized care just for women navigating this stage of life. With MIDI, booking a virtual visit is simple. You'll meet with a compassionate clinician who gets it. They'll listen to your symptoms, answer your questions, and create a personalized care plan just for you. MIDI Health treats hot flashes, night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness, and libido changes, weight and body changes, brain fog, memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety, and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, joint pain, bone loss, and fracture risk, and more. MIDI's recommendations can have a huge impact on your well-being. And guess what? Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers. No memberships, no hidden fees. If insurance isn't an option, their affordable cash prices keep care within reach. You deserve to feel amazing. Don't wait. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI Health, specialized care for your next chapter. Did you know that when your metabolism is working properly, you'll feel the benefits in literally every aspect of your life? I found a valuable tool that's been a game changer for me. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's this sleek little device that measures your metabolism through your breath. On the app, Lumen shows you whether you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. Here's how it works. First thing in the morning, you breathe into your Lumen. It tells you what's happening with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs, and gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day. And it doesn't stop there. You can check in with Lumen before and after meals or workouts so you know exactly how your body is responding in real time. It's like having a metabolism whisperer in your pocket. And here's why this matters. Your metabolism is like the engine of your body. When it's running smoothly, everything improves. Plus, Lumen even tracks hormonal shifts like your cycle or menopause, adjusting its recommendations to keep you fueled and feeling great. Take the next step to improving your health. Go to lumen.me/noise to get 20% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/noise for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. I want to talk to you all about something I've struggled with in the past, and that's my relationship with food and my body. I struggled with anorexia for years in my 20s, and finding good treatment and reaching recovery was complicated for several reasons. One being that treatment wasn't covered by insurance simply because I still got my period. It was frustrating to have to handle it all on my own. Eating disorders are so common, but really aren't talked about enough. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to Equip. Equip is a virtual, evidence-based eating disorder treatment program that helps you recover at home so you don't have to press pause on work, family, or other important parts of your life to heal your relationship with food. Equip provides you with a dedicated care team that can include a therapist, a dietitian, medical provider, and a mentor who has been through recovery. Equip treats patients of all ages with all types of eating disorders, is covered by insurance, and has no wait list. If you're struggling with your relationship with food and your body, or know someone who is, don't wait to get a free consultation with Equip. Visit equip.health/noise to learn more about Equip's virtual accessible eating disorder treatment. That's Equip, EQUIP.health/noise. All right, beautiful people, we're back. Let's call this section the Dance of Self-Abandonment. What does it actually look like? Some signs that you might be living in self-abandonment. Sometimes the signs are physiological, the knot that you get in your stomach when you say yes, but you mean no. When you give in and acquiesce, that could be it. Here's some other examples. Performing instead of being. This one, I think that I got so used to doing that I don't even know where the line gets crossed. I don't even know where my performance ends and my self begins. I mean, I can mostly tell you, but it's a little confusing. This is where we contort ourselves and bend ourselves into the shape of what others expect of us when we don't talk about our own needs. We don't talk about our own desires. We don't talk about what's happening within our instincts. Maybe it's playing like the cool girl. Like I want to be like the chill girl when you're anything but, and you stay quiet when everything in you is screaming to speak up. I've noticed that I'm doing this so I think I may have passively and casually mentioned over here that I'm in a new relationship. More on that later. It's been very exciting and fun and amazing. And at the same time, I haven't been in a new relationship in a minute. I have also not been in a new relationship since I've been sober, because when I started my last one, I was still drinking. So I'm coming at this from a very different perspective. One that is showing me all of my stuff, all of my insecurities, all of my new relationship insecurities. They are really shining bright. And one of those is wanting to be the cool girl. Wanting to be the girl who's not super emotional, who's not super dramatic. And I had a moment a couple of weeks ago where I was talking to him. We're going to start, I decided that I'm going to refer to him as Dr. Fox. You've been formally introduced to Dr. Fox. I was talking to Dr. Fox and I said, I was probably crying. And I said, I am so afraid to go all the way in. I'm giving you like 85, 90% of me. Because to give you 100%, sometimes I get neurotic. Sometimes I get squirrely. Sometimes I get scared. And my mind goes to places. I will go so deep, so fast in my anxious mind. I will start planning my own funeral. And then when I come out of it, when I pick my head up and take a breath, I get ashamed and embarrassed of where I have gone, of how squirrely I have become in this. And I don't want to say anything because I'm afraid you're going to think I'm fucking crazy, because I have been told that by past partners. Even for me to like lay all my cards out on the table, even just to say that is a lot. To me, that is not self-abandoning. I'm still self-abandoning a little bit because I'm holding back because I still want to be the chill girl. I still want to be the cool girl. I don't want to be too dramatic. I don't want to be too much because I've been told that so many times and I'm afraid that he will leave. So that's an example of self-abandoning. Directly related, when we are gaslighting ourselves, we are self-abandoning. So it's when we have an inner knowing, a gut feeling, a deep desire, but instead of honoring it, we dismiss it. We tell ourselves, it's not that bad. I'm being dramatic. I need to not be like that. I need to not be so emotional about this. It's really not that big of a deal. But actually, when our body is waving red flags all over the damn place. And yes, sometimes the red flags can be waving a little dramatically because of our past trauma, because of old stuff that has happened, because of our history. But at the same time, like, even if that's the case, that's valid. It's valid. And at the very least, like when we're in relationships, that should be at least heard. You know, your feelings and the words around them, how you describe it should be heard. It doesn't necessarily mean people need to drop everything that they're doing and accommodate you. Like, my hope is that we can get to a place of self-awareness when we know that, like, okay, this is my own stuff. This is from my own trauma. However, I'm talking more about things where it's an inner knowing that we should leave a relationship. It's an inner knowing that something or someone is not safe. And we tell ourselves it's not that bad. I'm being dramatic. Or someone's behavior towards us is terrible, is shit. And we tell ourselves it's not that bad. That's gaslighting yourself. That's self-abandoning. Also, when we overfunction in relationships, when we are always the one holding space and it's not reciprocated, when we are always the one keeping the peace, when we are always the one who brings the elephants in the room forward, when it's like an obvious thing and we're not being met halfway, if you will, when we bend over backwards to make sure everyone else is comfortable, when it costs us our own well-being, that is self-abandoning. This one's kind of nuanced, but I wanted to add it in here because it is specific to what I talk about a lot and what I know that a lot of you really struggle with is that we are self-abandoning when we ignore our inner critic. What I mean by that is when we allow our inner critic to take over and we believe what it's telling us, we are self-abandoning. My hope is that if you have followed my work for any length of time, if you have read How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, because that's the book that I go in depth in the inner critic. I think it's chapter 1, in fact. My hope is that you have gotten to a place of self-awareness where you can hear your inner critic. That's the first and most important step. From there, you do work on it. But my hope is that you're at the very least at that place where you hear it. So if you are there, it is an act of self-abandoning when you allow that inner critic to run wild instead of challenging it. Instead of asking, who put you in charge? Is this really true? Do I want to believe these thoughts about myself, or do I want to just notice and move on? Do I want to work on turning things around? Do I want to work on believing more empowering thoughts? Ignoring your inner critic's origins, believing your inner critic, I should say, is an act of self-abandonment. If you lean on coping mechanisms that are numbing and allow you to avoid for too long, because let's be honest, I think it can be somewhat helpful to numb out a little bit as we are in this apocalypse. But you know where the line is. You do know. You know when it switches over from self-care into complete numbing out, where you are avoiding more than just the current events of the world. Whether it's scrolling, drinking, control, overworking, perfectionism, whatever your drug of choice is, whether it's a substance or a process, when what you really need to do, when you know the better coping mechanism is maybe you need to sit with your feelings or just ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? What is it that I'm actually needing in this moment instead of scrolling through Instagram? I know I've had to ask myself that a million times. What is it that you truly need in those moments? When you are leaning on coping mechanisms that numb instead of heal, that is an act of self-abandonment. When you are letting shame run the show, this one, I'm going to try not to go on and on about this one because I could. I'm going to just distill it down to this. If you spiral in self-judgment, directly related to what I just talked about in terms of the inner critic. If you allow your inner critic to, because inner critic is very closely related to shame, P.S. If you allow yourself to spiral in that self-judgment, if you are making choices from a place of, I'm not good enough, instead of practicing self-compassion, instead of reaching out for help and hopefully getting empathy back from the people that you trust, instead of coming from making decisions from a place of worthiness, from a place of love, care, respect for yourself, if you're letting shame run the show instead, that's an act of self-abandonment. And I want to add a caveat to that one, is it's a big one, and it's also one that I think even the quote unquote best of us, and when I say best of us, I mean people who understand how shame resilience works. P.S. I have a program for that. Know when it's happening. Even us have a push-pull with this particular form of self-abandonment. It's a full-time job and one that is incredibly life-changing. You will see progress for sure. And I just wanted to emphasize that, and with all of these, not just this one, it's a one day at a time gig. That's what I call all of personal growth. It's a one day at a time gig. My hope is that you can shorten the gap between like when you start the behavior, the self-abandonment behavior that you're doing, and then choose something that is healthier for you and it comes from a place of love versus fear. Because that's all this is, fear versus love. My hope is that you can close the gap faster. So when you fall into those places of leaning on coping mechanisms that numb, when you fall into a place of inner spiraling, when you fall into that place of shame or overfunctioning, the gap is short to where you then lean on behaviors that are better for you. Okay? I just wanted to make that caveat. So letting shame run the show is a form of self-abandonment. The last example I want to give you is abandoning your dreams for shoulds. It's basically settling. And Lord knows I have done this before. You might downplay your big dreams and goals because they're too risky, they're too indulgent, they're impractical, they're too much for others to handle. You might leave people behind. You're afraid of people's opinions and judgments. So you choose the safe, reasonable path, even if it leaves you feeling dead inside, hollow. I mean, your soul just hurts. All of these to say, how many did I have? About 6? Self-abandonment is that slow erosion of self-trust, because this is what this is all about, is self-trust. It's a slow erosion of self-trust, these maybe seemingly innocuous and small betrayals that add up over time until one day you sort of pick your head up and look around and realize you don't trust yourself. You might not even recognize yourself anymore in this life that you've created. It might be that dramatic. It might not. And the antidote for that is what I'm going to be talking about over the next 10 weeks, and that's coming home to yourself, tiny moment by tiny moment. All right, so shifting gears. How do we stop doing this? How do we know what the problem is. We know what it looks like. So how do we stop doing this? What it comes down to, it's a handful of things. Anytime we are engaging in personal growth, whether it's listening to my podcast, other podcasts like mine, whether you're reading self-help books and even going to workshops and going to therapy and things like that. All of those things are slowly moving the needle towards self-trust. 100%. Don't stop doing that. Absolutely don't stop doing that. And grab onto the things that you feel the most resonant with. Do more of those things. So it's that and a combination of the subtle art of learning how to listen to your body's wisdom. So how do we do that? It comes down to slowing down for one. So this can look like journaling. It can look like meditation. I also want to say this. I do think that you can get into a meditative state by doing things other than traditional meditation. I have seen firsthand how much traditional meditation has helped me. And what I mean by that is, sitting down, closing your eyes, focusing on your breath, either doing a guided meditation or doing meditation on your own, an actual meditation practice. Yes, I have absolutely seen that move the needle in a positive way for me. And I also think that you can get yourself there by doing things like walking. I prefer to get to that place without music. but I also like music. So those are fewer and far between. Even like doing the dishes when you're driving and no one's talking to you and you don't have the radio on, if you're washing your hair, like things like that, that puts your brain waves into a different state than your normal conscious thinking. Sometimes even having sex and things like that, any kind of movement, dance, things like that can be meditative 100%. Things like embracing joy and pleasure, leaning into the moments when they are happening, feeling the gratitude of those moments of just sheer joy, whether it's laughter or just the feeling of joy and pleasure, real pleasure, whether it comes from something you're doing with another person, whether it comes from eating amazing foods, whatever that pleasure is, leaning into those moments. Those are ways to start to cultivate a practice of self-trust. It happens just like it happens in relationships with others. Trust is built in slow increments over time, slowly, consistently, and over time. There's also the advice of making small promises to yourself kind of as building blocks and keeping them. So for instance, if you, and keep them small if you're going to run with this. When you tell yourself you need to rest, you actually do that. You actually rest. When you tell yourself you're going to reach out to a friend for help, you actually do that even when it's hard. So that's one way to do it. That's not my favorite way. It's not my favorite way unless it works for you. But I worry that people who really struggle to keep promises with themselves, that might not be a great first step. However, I truly believe in what I mentioned before, listening to your body's wisdom, the slowing down, doing something that can get you into that meditative state, or meditating in general. And it's not that you are going to hear these, have this massive sky opening of suddenly you trust yourself when you're in meditation. Like the point is to train your brain. You're retraining your brain to slow down so you can listen to your inner wisdom better. So you have a more clear channel of those messages being sent to you. Another thing that's important on your way to coming back home to yourself, and P.S., I am going to explain a little bit more what I mean by that phrase. But it's giving yourself permission to be messy and imperfect on your journey, quote unquote, back home. It's like anything else in personal growth, anything that you're working on in your own personal development. It's going to be messy. It's going to be imperfect. This is what I was saying earlier about even people who do this for a living. It's messy and imperfect. It's never a straight line. It's never linear at all. And I want to say one more thing about the how of self-trust, of coming back home to yourself, is that I am coming to realize that age does help. So as I've mentioned, I'm about to turn 50. It's a milestone birthday. And even regardless, I do think that as I entered my late 40s, it felt like it picked up speed. And what I mean by it is the discomfort of self-abandoning. You know how I always talk about when you are faced with two difficult options? I'll use a breakup or a divorce as an example. One option, you stay in a relationship that you are pretty sure is no longer serving you, but it's not going to get better. You've kind of come to that place. That's one option, is to stay in the relationship where you know that if you stayed, yes, it's comfortable, but you're just really not that happy. You're really not fulfilled. The other option is to leave, which there's so much uncertainty there on many levels. I don't need to get into it. It's obvious. Both outcomes are hard. Both outcomes are hard. You have to get to a place where one of those outcomes is just a little less scary. One of those outcomes is more intolerable than the other. And I think that as we start to age, our pain tolerance gets lower for those uncomfortable situations, for the behaviors that are no longer serving us. It's just not okay anymore. We start to have less tolerance for them. I don't know if this is part of our hormones changing. I've heard that it is, that when our estrogen and progesterone levels start to slowly drop, and they especially do so in our 40s, is when we start to see pretty significant changes in the amount of bullshit that we will tolerate. Because apparently estrogen and progesterone, and maybe I may have this wrong, it may be just one of them, is the hormone that is the nurturing hormone and that gives us the patience that we need in order to take care of people, in order to mother our children, etc. So when that starts to drop, we just don't. It's just a no. It's just a no. Okay, we're going to take one more ad break. And when we get back, I'm going to talk about what I'm calling the courage to stay. And what I mean by that is the courage to stay home when you have come home to yourself or when you start behaving in that way. We'll be right back.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. Here's where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so you can grab those and go out with your friends. Abercrombie's denim fits come in a range of washes. Build your looks around Abercrombie denim. Shop online or in-store.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, we're back. Before the break, I was talking about, meeting your inner compass. Like, how do we come home to ourselves? And I was mentioning that with age, sometimes it becomes a little bit more easier. So like the path becomes more clear, I think is what I'm trying to say. One interesting thing is, I don't know how much y'all believe in astrology. Where are my astrology girlies at? Remember when I had Tracy Cornell on and she talked about the gene keys? So Tracy, the gene keys are, I guess, kind of indirectly or maybe directly related to the planets. And when I told her, I met with her last year and I told her, 2025, I'm going to be turning 50. And she said, oh, Chiron's returning for you. And I was like, what is that? Who's Chiron? Do I have to meet them? That sounds scary. Chiron is a planet. And apparently when we turn 27, I think it's Mercury comes back. And when we turn around 50, Chiron comes back. And what I mean by come back is apparently, and I might get this wrong, I'm not super into astrology, but it's whatever planet, so in this case it's Chiron, wherever it was in the day and time that you were born, it returns to that same spot around 50 years later. So around the time that we turned 50. And Chiron apparently is the planet of life lessons. More specifically, whatever the wound is, the main wound that you are carrying with you throughout your life has the capacity to turn into your gift, has the capacity to turn into your biggest life lesson. So what is that for you? I don't know about you, but it might be the placebo effect. It might be my imagination, or it might actually be Chiron coming to slap me upside the head. But I am feeling these big life lessons so much. Self-trust is one of them. Another one is detachment, which, let's be honest, those are related. Let's not beat around the bush. Those are related. Anyway, I came back from the break to talk about the courage to stay. What does it feel like when you start choosing yourself? First of all, it can feel fucking scary. It can feel like you walked into a room where everyone breaks out into choreography and you don't know the dance, but you're going to perform it. And you're like, I don't know what the moves are. Let me just do a little bit of sashaying and smile real big and move my body around, and hopefully I'll just figure it out. That's what it can feel like. I'll be honest with you though, the big things that I have done where I truly have felt like I trusted myself, not only trusted myself, but listened to the inner wisdom the first place. Just listen to it. Like, oh, there you are. Okay, I hear you. There's that act. And then acting on it, doing the thing that the inner wisdom is telling me is, yes, scary. Leaving my marriage was that. And also the most empowering and freeing and wonderful thing I have ever done in my life. Simultaneously scariest thing ever. It's the knowing that I had to jump and there might not be a net, but that I was the net. I am the only person that can catch me. And it's scary. Like, and if you've relied on people your entire life, and if you've had the idea in your head, whether consciously or unconsciously, that other people, especially romantic partners, are there to save you, leaving a long relationship can feel like trying to peel off your own skin. That's the way it felt. Walking away from the belief that I am the only one that is here to save me was both terrifying and enormously empowering. The most freeing, powerful thing I've ever felt in my life. At one point, it was like letting it slip through my fingers that, oh, he's not here to heal my childhood wounds. He's not here to mend my broken heart. He's not here to kiss all of my wounds and make me feel better about myself. But it's me. I get to do it. First of all, how? Second of all, the power that comes from that. The power of knowing I'm in control of it and I don't have to rely on somebody else to do it for me. I don't have to rely on their timing. I don't have to rely on how they're doing it. I don't have to rely on how well I think they're doing it and in the right order, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to worry about any of that. I just get to make it all up myself and do it myself and rely on me. I'll take that. Now I will take that any day over handing that power over to someone else. So it can feel scary and simultaneously amazing. When you start to trust yourself, when you stop self-abandoning, many times you will need to deal with the discomfort that others don't like that you changed the dance. You may very well leave people behind, and that will look like boundaries. Likely they will not like it, and you will hear about it. I heard from one family member, I liked you better when you were drinking. They apologized afterwards when they saw how hurtful that was, but I will never forget that. When we start to heal and behave differently and it impacts other people, a lot of times they don't like it and you will hear about it. It is a side effect of this. And sometimes you'll think it's not worth it. But I assure you that it is. The courage to stay with yourself also looks like creating new patterns of self-trust. I'm in the very beginning stages of this. I am determined to create a pattern of self-trust versus a pattern of self-abandonment. I have mastered the pattern of self-abandonment. I know it backwards and forwards. That's the map that I've created. And now I'm starting to create a pattern of self-trust, moment by moment, conversation by conversation, decision by decision at a time. The last thing I want to say about this, the side effects of stopping the self-abandonment and starting to trust yourself, is the ripple effect of trusting yourself that it'll have on all of your relationships, because you're going to start having new boundaries. You're going to start speaking up for yourself a little bit faster than you normally would. You're going to start revealing all of yourself, and the people who can handle you, the people who can continue to show up for you, you'll start to see that. And these people will ebb and flow throughout your life, but you will start to see a ripple effect of trusting yourself and what that looks like in all of your relationships and all of your endeavors, really. So that's all I have for you in terms of content. And as I mentioned, the worksheet, the downloadable worksheet, AndreaOwen.com/658, and that link is in the show notes. It has a couple of questions on there for you to sort of determine where you're at in terms of your own self-trust. And then, as I mentioned before, there might be four. I think there's 3 reflective journaling questions for you to ponder. And if this is something that feels like a poignant topic for you, I really invite you to check out Write Your Way Through It. This is going to be a theme I am going to kick off our very first meeting by talking about this, and that's going to be the reflective question that I asked the group. What is your relationship to self-trust? What is your relationship to self-abandonment? And let's talk about it. Let's have a group discussion about it. I'll do some laser coaching. I will give each of you specific journaling prompts. Whether what you want to journal on is about this or not, or something else, you will get your own specific journaling prompt for whatever you need support with. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Stay tuned for the other 9 life lessons that I will be talking about over the next 9 Wednesdays as we lead up to my 50th. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I would be so incredibly grateful if you haven't done so already, if you could leave a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Super easy if you already listen to your shows over there. But if you don't, or maybe you have the app on your phone, but you listen to the show on a different app, if you could leave a review for this show, it matters so much. I wish I could express how much it matters. I also wish that it didn't matter so much, but alas, it does. So if you haven't already, please go review and rate the show. It would mean so much to me. And thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.